have the pleasure of talking with Carrie Rasenberger. So I saw Carrie's post on Instagram and I just loved her post. They're just hit me at the right place at the right time. And you were just telling me a little bit about your post. I'd love for you to share.
Yes. My posts have a lot of thought behind it. I am 56 years old. I've, been on a great journey, but a journey that I really learned a lot and found myself. So my post is a lot of times things that mean a lot to me that I was really thinking, wow, if I was 20 and somebody told me that, maybe I could have learned something different or at least had an insight, or my 30s or my 40s. So a lot of times it's either an inspiring quote that kind of hit me, or it's something I get, comes up by myself. Sometimes when I'm just ready to go to sleep, it'll pop in my head. I'm like, oh, I could go get a paper and write that down. So it's been really fun for me to do this. And I love my followers. I get the best response, and I love helping people with this.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. What got you into coaching?
Well, it's great that you asked that. My whole life, I've always been, when I was younger, even in high school, I was a peer counsel, like a peer, I guess a peer counselor, and working with kids. I worked in women's battered shelters. I always was really drawn to um, helping others my whole life. And that's just who I am. And then when I got into corporate America about 25 years, I was had a pretty intensive career, and I was, even though I was a VP, I was always coaching executives, my salespeople, clients, and it was always part of my role. And once I stayed home as a mom for a while, I really got this urge that I need to do what my passion is and what life is calling me to do. In all those years, I kind of thought of what was the root that I was doing in everything, and what was the purpose of my life then? And it was really empowering others to find happiness,
Mhm.
and is where I'm at, and it's what I'm doing. And I'm working on some online courses right now that I will be launching early September. And all of it is really focusing on finding your happiness, you know, after a toxic relationship, finding your happiness through self love, finding your happiness, learning to set boundaries.
Mhm.
And comes back to is finding that true happiness, not that fake happiness out there. There's a real confusion, I think, that people have between the two.
So tell me about that confusion. What's fake happiness and what's real happiness?
I think a lot of times, and even in my 20s or when I was a teenager, and it could even happen later, you think, oh, if I date that guy, I'm going to be happy. If I'm with that group of friends, I'm going to be happy. Or if I am, by myself, something that I've always wanted, an outfit, I'm going to be happy. And that is temporary happiness. It is not true happiness. It is that moment. It isn't who you are. And even when you do get that, maybe you date that man, it's your happiness isn't there because it's not coming from internal.
Mhm.
And that's where a lot of things that I've learned in life is that it isn't external. True happiness is within, and it is being comfortable in your skin of your strengths, your weaknesses, everything in between. And I have a lot in between. And it's really finding that, understanding your values, knowing that you can depend on yourself, being your own best friend. When I was younger, I used to think, oh, that's so weird. Like when I was in my 20s, if people were like, oh, you have to be, love yourself and self-love. And I would have been thinking that was really strange. But when you think about it, Hollywood, movies, social media, they all kind of hype self love to be something different. And really, what self love is, if you look it up in the dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, which is around a lot longer than, than probably we've been, self love, the meaning of it is the respect for your well being and happiness. That's what
Mhm.
it is. So everybody should have self-love. It shouldn't
Mhm.
be this weird thing, or you're conceited, or, you know. And I even think of a funny example. My kids were the High School Musical. I think everybody knows that. And I remember my daughter, I think she was in first grade, and we were talking about Sharpay, and she's like, Sharpay just loves herself too much. God, you know, and she's rambling on like that's self-love. And back then I didn't think to correct it. No, that's being conceited. That's being selfish. Selfish is when you focus just on your own needs, nobody else's. And that could have been a time I could have corrected and really shared with her what it's important to have love for yourself. It's important to take care of your well-being and your happiness. If you don't do it, you can't rely on anybody else to. You know, we're in control of ourselves.
Right. Did
Mhm.
you suffer from lack of happiness or depression or anything like that? Is that one thing that led you
No,
to this, or you just work with?
I can't really say that I had depression, but I had a lot of trauma as a child. I
Mhm.
had my parents. I had a drunken dad, as alcoholism, very abusive. And so when you learn that, is something that I've learned, and you have childhood trauma and PTSD, you know, like you learn to freeze, you know, the three things of flight, freeze, and fight. When you're a child, I froze. I was scared. That was my reaction. So back then, I was protecting myself. And what happens, you don't correct your childhood trauma, it's really tragic what you carry into your adult life, into
Right.
your adult relationships. And so I had a lot of suffering in that, where because of the trauma I had from my birth father, and he was a very educated man, electrical engineer, successful in business. You know, it was kind of like we were the white picket house that everybody would have thought, but nobody knew what went on inside. And so
Yeah.
we had some really tragic, and it's funny, my sister's almost a decade older than me, and we just spent the weekend together. And what is, you know, we didn't grow up together because I was so much younger, but what we just really opened up, in the same struggles I had is the same struggles she had. You know, it was hard of being a people pleaser because that's what we did to keep our dad happy. It was you know, staying away from trauma, avoiding it, don't speak up, you know, it all the things that go in when you have a toxic, narcissistic, and anybody usually with a drug problem or alcohol, they're going to be all about them. But
Mhm.
you carry, you have troubles in relationships, in trusting or doing everything and letting people take advantage of you. So I had years of a lot of suffering. I was always kind of happy go lucky with my girlfriends. I've had the best girlfriend relationships, and I still have them today. But in my romantic relationships, it was always really, really hard because I gave 100%, and I was always trying to make them happy. And
Mhm.
big wake up call, because I never made me happy. I stayed on the back burner. I did whatever they want. It didn't matter. What do you want for dinner? I don't care what you want. Or it was
Right.
always, they weren't happy. It was always trying more and cleaning more and doing more and really sacrificing who I was and what I really stand for. So, from a lot of those struggles, I started reading books on narcissists and kind of understanding that gave me a lot of forgiveness to myself, of not, when you grow up with that abusive parent, you get that it's my fault, maybe if I did this it would be different, and you get a lot of guilt or a lot of shame. And so learning to let go of that and love who I am. I'm a great person. I mean, I don't mean it like that conceited, but I give a lot, I share a lot, I would give my shirt off my back if somebody needed it. But what I've learned is doing it in a healthy way, learning to set healthy boundaries where I didn't have boundaries before. And in all relationships, you need healthy boundaries. It's okay to say no and stop saying yes to everybody. So learning to work through those things, that's how I devised my happy life assessment. And some of it is deep and some of it might be too deep for some people. But the number one thing that I want my clients to receive, you know, from this, to grow from this, is awareness. And a
Mhm.
lot sometimes with my clients, I'll have when they're really struggling and not knowing where they're at with their struggles, we'll work on, maybe depending on who it is and what their needs, we might work on just a couple weeks on awareness. When you're getting stressed, how do you feel physically? Where
Mhm.
does it up? Because a lot of times people don't even think, they just explode. If that's the way they handle it, they just go run away, they hide, they avoid. And a lot of times understanding your awareness of your physical body, some gets heart palpitations. Mine, I get tense in my jaw,
Mhm.
um, stress in your neck, you can get shakes, and understanding that and being like, okay, what am I feeling right now?
Mhm.
What is that feeling, or what is triggering me, and becoming aware of what is triggering, what is that, and sitting with it. Okay, do you need to do a grounding technique right now to relax you before sitting with it? Maybe do a grounding technique, but being aware of what you're feeling. And you know if it's anger, sit with it, understand it. Why am I feeling this? What's your why? Because that's how we grow, and that's how we learn that we can be proactive instead of reactive like a bomb,
Right.
or at least deal with the feelings instead of hiding it under. And these are all steps. It's kind of your awareness is the first step to truly being happy. I know I've kind of gone off on different tangents here, but this is all part of finding the happiness, is dealing with your struggles and what you haven't dealt with to get you to where you want to go for your future.
Right, right. I feel the same way. It's like people think of happiness, oh, what can I do to be happy? What can I
Mhm.
do to become happy? I need to be happy. But if you're so cluttered with, trauma, like you said, it's really hard to get there unless you clear and deal with that first, right?
Exactly. And and a lot of times I think people don't have a true understanding what trauma is.
Hmm.
Some it's really bad, like, having the worst of physical abuse or divorce. I mean, trauma can be as hard of a feeling if you grew up with parents that neglected you,
Hmm.
abandoned, weren't emotionally taking care of you. We're
Hmm.
just focused on that type of trauma. I deal with a lot of women going through that, and they're in their the women I have I'm working with is probably late 20s to mid 50s. The majority of my women, and a lot are still, even if they're in their 50s, dealing with that neglect and that pain, and they have the hardest troubles with the relationship with their mom now. And so we're really working on, you need to focus on yourself, your happiness.
Hmm.
You got right for you. If she's still walking all over you, then where's the boundaries? What
Right.
be the boundaries? Until you say no, until you maintain your boundaries, you're never going to be happy, because you're always going to be battling. And sometimes the hard thing to understand when you're going through this is that sometimes we have to let these people go in our lives,
Hmm.
because us so much, and for us, for our own mental health, we have to let them go, because if they can't respect us and respect our values, or coming into our house even and not walking all over us when it's in our house, then maybe it's time to build space in between. Maybe it's time to set boundaries. If you act this way, this is unacceptable in my house. And it's not yelling, it's talking very matter of fact, this type of stuff, direct, soft, but not bringing the emotional ups and downs, just matter of fact, just setting it and learning to control those emotions. And then if you're with your partner, or you're with somebody and you need to break down and cry, do it. That's the best thing. Crying's so healthy for you. But when you're with that toxic person that you've been struggling them, don't even give them the time of day to have the power over you. Everyone has the power in you. And the beautiful thing is once you realize it, that we all are empowered. We all are born with the same worthiness. Nobody's different. It's just finding that worthiness and believing it again. And that's where I help people, and everybody has a different journey, what they need to go to. But to
Right.
me, finding that in respecting yourself and loving yourself like your best friend and believing in yourself, that's where you're going to get true happiness and just be content. To me, happiness is being very content. I'm very content in life. Does that mean I never have a bad day? No, we're human.
Right, right.
We all are going to have bad days. And I make that clear. Finding your happiness and your contentment doesn't mean you're going to be happy go lucky every day and feel like you're jumping up for joy. But when you're going through a hard time and you're going through the struggle, you have learned how to have self love, self compassion, self care. So instead of being eaten up and really, beating yourself up with that rough inner critic that jumps out sometime, you've learned how to tame it. You've learned how to talk to yourself. And I do this with clients a lot when they're in this situation and they're having a difficult time looking outside the situation at what's going
Mhm.
on. But so it's just sucked in. I mean, it's happened to me, it happens to all of us. A lot of times after they say their situation, I'll say to them, okay, what I want you to do now is pull yourself, you're out of that situation. And who's your best friend? They'll name a friend. And then I'll say, now that what you just described in that detail, let's say I'm just going to throw any name out there. Let's say Dina. Dina is going through this stuff and she's laid it out. She's cried with you. You talked to her for, weeks about this. With your compassion for how much you love her, how would you talk to her? And sometimes they pause because it takes a little bit of the shift. And it's so beautiful what comes out, how they would talk to their friend if their friend was in that situation. And if they don't go deep, and I said, well, come on. I said, what else would you do? I mean, you care for her. And so, what else? What else? What else would you say? And sometimes it's that aha moment when I say to them, okay, that how you would talk to your friend, instead of how you're saying you're beating yourself up, have that compassion and now put your name there and talk to yourself like that.
Mhm.
And that is where self-love, that's where true happiness takes us, instead of beating us up because we make a mistake. And you know what, everyone makes mistakes, we all do. That's just part of being human, okay? But when we make something, you can say, okay, wow, I made a mistake. And that was a bad one if it's a really bad one. But talk yourself through it. Okay, what can I learn from this? What can I forgive myself on this? Or maybe what I could be different? And how can I grow from this?
Right.
And maybe the feelings you're feeling embarrassed, you're feeling devastated, but working with yourself and understanding that you're human just like your friends are human, it helps you a lot. And these are different areas that I truly believe that people find their happiness, they find who they are, what they value. And once we start doing that, it's amazing how different life is, and it's a beautiful thing. And when I say that, we live more in the present,
Mhm.
we're more comfortable in our present. Our critic, it still pops out that it's just going to happen, but
Right.
we our past and beating ourselves up at the time. We've learned to work through and not worry about our future, which we overthink, we stress out, gives us anxiety. It can paralyze some people. I have some clients that keeps them, when they get into that mode, it keeps them frozen for days and they can't function. And bless their hearts, it's part of life. It's a hard thing to work through. But when we learn to be in the present, because the only thing you can control in life is your present moment. You
Right.
can't change the past, right? It happened. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but you can't change the past. It happened. If you fight with it, um, Brian Katie wrote a really great book called Loving What Is, and it kind of helped me
Right.
a little. Have you ever read that book?
Yes, I've read it.
Yes,
I love, uh,
she's brilliant.
yeah.
And that was one of the ones when I was going through this transition. I read that book because a lot of times my struggles was the past,
Mhm.
going back to the past. How was it my fault? And the biggest thing that stuck with me from that book, and I'd love for you to join in and say something, is what she said: if you fight with your past, you'll 110% lose every time.
Right.
You can't the past, you can't do anything about it. You don't have to say, oh, I mean, if it was horrible, it was horrible. You could say any other words you want to say, how bad it was, but it happened and it was your reality. In kind of what she said, which took me a little bit to, I guess, sink in, but it was reality and it was supposed to happen. And she was like, why? Because it did.
Right.
And go. I mean, that helped me let go of some of my holding on to the struggles. How about you? What did you think of that?
Well, I 100% agree, and I teach that too because accepting what is everything. Because I found myself, I was always fighting life. Like I
Mm,
wanted when something was in my face, I wanted it to be different. I wanted people to be different. When someone was bothering me, I wanted them to fix themselves. It was like every situation I accepted it for a second, but I wanted it to be different. And it's a constant reminder now for myself to like accept things as they are because on like you said, otherwise you're just fighting life constantly. And that's
And
not the battle I want to be in.
no, and I just want to hug everyone that's in that battle. I was in that battle and it's not fun. And
Right.
it's kind of black cloud follows you wherever you go because you're always in battle.
Right.
Whether just like everything you said, you wanted to change them, you wanted to fix them, you wanted to do that. And what I really learned, what I needed to work on, and I don't ever want to use the word fix, but what I wanted needed to heal and work on is myself. I
Right.
can't do I cannot control anybody else. I have two
Right.
wonderful kids, 19 and 21 now. I can teach them everything. I can want them to do something, but they're still going to make their own choice.
Right.
They're in control of what they do. And just like other people. So I think learning to love what is, because really, besides the present moment, you can't do anything about it.
Right.
Mhm. So how do you feel about, all this? Anything else that you'd want to add to it?
I love everything you're saying. I completely agree. I think awareness is extremely important. Unless you're aware of what's happening, then you don't even know how to move forward. So awareness is first, and then acceptance brings a sense of harmony in the body
Mm,
and mind where you could actually move forward because when you're fighting something, that's where you are. It's hard to take a step forward when you're fighting, but when you're in harmony, then you get opportunities open and you could see in things differently. So what happens with me, and I would love to hear your opinion and your experiences. I've found people that are in so much resistance, like there's so much resistance that they can't even move forward. How do you deal with that?
Well, that's a really good question. And it kind of has, when I have clients come to me and I don't want, and they purchase I like doing, a free half-hour session first to make sure there's a connection. And
Mhm,
sometimes um, I feel that maybe a person might need to be with a therapist before a life coach. And the
mhm,
difference, therapists, they really dive in the past to the present. In
mhm,
life coach, talk about past if there's a struggle, but our main focus is the present and moving you forward where you need to go, where you want to go, where you always dreamed to be. And
mhm,
it's achievable if you're going to work at it. But if I have somebody, and I'm so honest, if I have somebody and they're in that standstill, that a very denial,
mhm,
and stuck on the past, sometimes I might say, go to a therapist first
mhm,
and then come with me. But sometimes I have some clients because they're so ready to move forward. They're working with the therapist and they're working with me at the same time. And
mhm,
it's some experience because they give the permission for the therapist and I to talk together. So
mhm,
it's really for me to be on the same page, even like if she's teaching some grounding techniques, but she's going to dive. back into more of the hard, I say hardcore because it's not easy. When you're going back to the inner child and going back into traumas as a child that you've kind of blocked out, you moved, you don't have memory from it.
Mhm.
Um, that needs to go through some steps of a therapist. I can do some, but I'd rather somebody that needs to go dive that deep to be with the therapist. And then I
Right,
can work at the same time of their current struggles, like they're not setting up boundaries. And then we'll talk about the past. What are the patterns you're learning that you did in the past that you're using with, that your therapist? And then we'll talk, well, how do you see in the present that is the same pattern, and what's holding you back? And then we'll talk about moving forward. Each person's journey is different. So
right,
with instance, there is some resistance that I can totally work with and help them, but it depends. They need to be ready and wanting to work. And
right.
if they're ready, wanting to work, and they have resistance, whether if it's from struggle, pain, we can work with that. But if
Mhm.
they aren't ready to work and they're 100% resistant, that's hard for me to take somebody on the journey. And I don't want anybody to waste their money until they're ready, because it's
Right,
so accepting to go into the journey of awareness. And
right.
like you, accepting. And then it's a big, I kind of like to use the word focus, awareness, and accepting I use. And then sometimes I just have people write on stickies you in capital letters, like YOU, and to put that on because they've been so stuck being a people pleaser, or from childhood trauma, or from
Right.
broken, they never think about themselves. And so I'm like, leave it everywhere. Leave it on your computer,
Yeah.
you know,
Go inside.
phone to come up. If they're really struggling, I'm like, have it pop up every morning at 8, just with the word you, just to bring it back as a reminder. Because those little reminders, I know it might sound silly, but somebody really struggling, and I was there. I kept inside my computer big, big letters you, because I'd always get sucked in of never doing anything for me and being the caregiver and doing this and never getting my walks and never, drinking my water. And so that you really helped me remind of, okay, you've been doing this for half a day. You haven't done or even thought of yourself today. So,
Right.
so that's good but resistance is that can be a tough one for the individual in it. And
Mhm.
ask them first is, you know, what is causing you to resist? How are you feeling with the resist? And then sometimes why questions, you have to be careful because that can be on defensive. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And how the conversation's going is, why do you think you're resisting? And if
Mhm.
we get progress moving with that, then it could just be fears. If it's somebody's fears, I can work with resistance fears. I
Right.
can work of somebody not believing in themselves. I
Mhm.
can work with a lot of things that we struggle battling with inner critic. But if it's resistance because you are so, unaware or kind of stuck in the past, that's, would probably be best to be with a therapist.
Mhm.
Do you have any insight on that you want to add, or?
Um, I love what you just said. For me, resistance also, I try to go more with what it feels like because
Mhm,
when you're in acceptance of something, you feel in harmony in your mind and body, even if you don't like it the way it is, there's a sense of, okay, this is what it is. But when you're in resistance, the body, like I get people to go within, and the body is just
mhm,
in turmoil constantly. And
mhm,
so I mostly work with people through the body and not the head, because
mhm.
my head goes in many, it's
Well, our would
over.
make it, we lie so much to ourselves. That's what I
Right.
trained also. When people are airing the overthinking is, what is your circumstance? Is it true? And a lot of times we'll walk through, like if somebody's getting jealous and, well, he looked at her wrong. That he wants her. And I'll be like, well, is that true? What your circumstance? If you had everybody in the room, right, seeing that a circumstance has to be a fact, would everybody say, yes, that's true?
Yeah.
And then you'll get, well, not really. It's probably just me thinking. And I said, well, you got to, when you're thinking a thought, think of the circumstance, like raining. If it's raining outside, yes, we'd all say it's raining. And then, because the circumstance creates your thoughts,
Mhm.
which, thoughts, which creates your feelings, which creates your actions, or avoidance, no actions, which creates your results. So I do work with thoughts sometimes. I will work with the feelings in the body, like you're saying, with tension to see how you're doing.
Right.
But work thoughts because we can control our brain so much more. We are always taught, oh, I think that, oh, that's true. And we aren't really taught that we have, our frontal lobe is our reasoning, right? And then we have an amygdala from back in our ancient cave times that if it was fear, like there's a big whatever coming at me, run. But what happens now in our modern day time, when we have think trauma that we struggle with, our amygdala takes over and we have no reason thought thinking anymore. And it's
Right.
just lies. And
Right.
so that's what we work on, when I work with people of, figuring out what triggered, well, how did you feel first? What was your body? Let's go deeper.
Mhm.
Because a lot
Right.
of times we get the tension in our body first before we even come out with words or our thoughts. So I love how you say that you work so much with that. I'd love to hear more insight what you have with working with the body.
Well, I personally started working with people on a physical level for years. I did fascia release and then I got into yoga. That was huge for me because I released so much tension and I taught yoga. And then I started doing breath work. My mind is so active. Like I used to be able to fool myself, seriously. So, and I am an active person. So my path was get into the body and with breath work and lots of movement. I do
Mhm.
TRE, trauma release exercises. I feel like once the energy is released from the body, the mind starts quietening down and you get a little bit of a reality picture of what's going on.
That's incredible. I love it. And
Yeah.
and so
Where do you
important.
live actually? Maybe we could do a session, trade a session.
I would love it. Oh, I'm in Carolina. And you're in California, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. We have the 3-hour difference. But I would love even to have with my online classes I'm going to do with different module things. I would even love, and you can advertise, your business from it of doing a little clip to teach people about the body and you doing the exercises or doing something that could help somebody incorporate you in that. And then maybe somebody needs to go it further and they could call and set up an appointment with you if you're
That
interested in
would
that.
be awesome. That would be awesome. I there's, I mean, all of this, with Louise Hay, she always says the emotions are really uh, connected to physical pain and different
Mhm.
with Carrie, like you were talking about your jaw. There's a lot of stress here. Um, and the throat about self-expression and all
Mhm.
this. So I could go really into that as well, where people can do self body massages and do affirmations and breath work. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can talk outside the, the recording. We can do that because, on a couple of them areas, maybe we can do a couple little clips and we can put it on the video that people, if they're interested. But then I don't mind you advertising your business if people want to explore that more.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wanted to also, I read your Happy Life Assessment PDF, and I love the statements you had there. They were so thought provoking. Like maybe I could, if I did these things, if I felt this way, how could I not be happy? But sometimes we
Mhm.
think about, oh, happiness, what can I do? But you had a lot of great information there. How did you come up with that? Or
Well, that was kind of when I was going through my own struggles and kind of hit hard of just I did nothing for myself. Um, and these from all the different books I read, Brene Brown's wonderful, and
mm,
just the read and researching YouTube, and from my getting certified from Coach U, their books of different things, I just started jotting down all these things of stuff I needed to work on or stuff that I did do. You know what I mean? Like I have my big 135-pound dog's whining for attention right now. If you hear little weird noises, it's him. But so doing that, I kind of started just writing things down. Like for me, what am I doing? What am I not doing? Am I even going to my doctor appointments yearly? That is terrible. I wasn't doing my doctor appointments for just
mhm,
checkup and different things. And I wasn't, taking vitamin. I eat healthy, but I mean, I was going through where I was eating a lot of junk food
mhm,
and not, eating, doing what's right for my body and my mind. And so from that, it came up with 5 areas, even though one's combined. I kind of have self love and self compassion together because I feel a lot of it could really cross over to one or the other. And in some of the different areas of what it asks besides environment, there probably could be a little crossover in some, but it's really, when I was having negative thoughts, I sat and suffered from my negative thoughts. And I'm like, well, everything I'm learning, why can't I form that and do positive affirmations? There's so much research of how that helps. And even if you don't believe it, saying it, there's proof as you get in the habit of saying it, you start believing it and starts becoming a part of your life. And compassion was really important to me because having the abusive dad I had, it's always like, and this is another thing my sister and I talked about, we're always so hard on ourselves. We always try perfectionism of being a great athlete, doing this. And I didn't have compassion. I was always hard on myself. Oh, I could do more. In sports, I hit, 10 home runs. Well, why didn't I do 20? You know what I mean? Even as a young,
it's
because
never enough.
yeah, that's what my dad was saying to me when I was 12. In my first season, I was younger than 12. Um, anyway, I was elementary, but I hit so many home runs. And he's like, well, why didn't you do more? You could have done
Oh my
like,
God.
but I'm just and not having the compassion and hard. I was really hard on myself. And I've always been a person that all my friends come to me for issues, and even like strangers I don't know and I meet, because I'm sure you are very empathic too, and just the empathy we have and the ear we have for somebody, but I didn't have that for myself.
Mhm.
It was so funny when I compiled this together, and I don't write very neat. It's very sloppy writing, and I'm cool with that. But I had list and list of pages of just things I compiled. And then with a good girlfriend, she's a life coach too, and into nature and kind of holistic and different things in that approach. And I'm like, Julie, let's sit down. Can you help me group these? These are the 5 areas I want. And we really had to go through. Some are very easy. Self care was pretty easy, as in, doctors, drinking, eating, exercise, that type of stuff. But there was some that was like, well, does this fall into self love? Does this fall into compassion? Or does this fall into awareness?
Mm,
And been, a good few hours really sorting them out. And it was wonderful. And I'm so grateful for her because something like that was helpful, having somebody to work with. And another thing that I learned, it's okay to get support and get help. And that's
mhm,
even, in something in self care. Are you relying on people for people to be there? So it did take a lot of time and effort. But for my clients that this is useful,
mhm,
it's tool for them. Always tell everybody it's not a score, a test score. It is for you to see personal growth, and it is not for you to get stressed out. I've had clients come to me the first time, and in the 5 areas, 3 out of the 5 they scored 0.
mhm. Yeah, but it's not so much the I found it to be really great because I could look at it and say, "Hey, this is something I could do." It was
Yeah.
like, I never thought this is something I could do, but there were a lot of things in there. It's like, I'm sure if I do this, I will feel better.
And that's what they said, and I didn't mean like a score zero, like it wasn't for them, it was awareness, and they were almost laughing with me. They're like, I really need to be aware of myself in a positive way, that it was very motivating.
Mhm,
Of talked about it, and I said, I'm a big believer of baby steps. For me, I don't like my clients to come up with a big action plan, because you're setting yourself up for failure. And
mhm,
then if the inner critic you're beating. So depending on the person, I like small steps, get
mhm,
that down really well. Is it something that is forming a habit? You can, if you're feeling good, then maybe we can add another one, just depending on the person. So
mhm,
when we look at this, and somebody has areas that needs a lot of work, I like to talk about, well, which area is the most passionate that you feel like you need right now?
mhm,
Let's just pick one area and let's talk about each one of them. And then what are maybe two that you think is something that's achievable that you can start working on? It's
mhm.
all, habit. I don't know. There's some scientific thing. There used to be from psychiatrists. They said it takes 21 days to start a healthy habit. Could be different now. But so that's why when you're starting something that makes you feel good, let's get it down. Look, just don't do it one week and say, okay, I'm going to the next one. Okay, I'm going to the next one. Because I used to operate like that. I used to be like, I'm gonna do, with that high energy. So it's really important. Have baby steps. Look at what your immediate needs are for your awareness. Let's
Mhm.
get this. And if you're struggling, I have some clients that are really struggling in the beginning. I'm like, text me. If I'm not with a client, I'll text you back, and do that once in a while. On a weekend, if somebody's really struggling, I'll take that call. They don't get
Okay.
charged for it, because I want them to have that support so they can keep taking a baby step forward, or at least still be where they're at and not feel like they're falling 10 steps back.
Right.
So to me, I find this as a really useful tool, and you're never going to have 100% on all of them. And even if you have one area that, to me, I still look at it. I have date weeks I feel good, and then I'll look at it when I have my off weeks, and I'm like, oh, I'm not really being nice to myself this week. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And sometimes when that you have those weeks, you don't even realize that you've been off for a week, and that inner critic's been attacking you, and
Mhm.
you just with it and fighting with it. And so for me, sometimes if I have my off weeks, I'll go through it, and I'm like, let's see what's going on that I might not be noticing.
Right.
So it's been, a useful tool.
So I wanted you to tell me a little bit about your coaching programs if someone wanted to sign up with you. And you made some really good points. Therapy is more about, reviewing, because I've been to therapy a lot too, and you just talk but with coaching is actually someone helping you to take action steps. And to me, that's what's so important because you can talk and talk and talk, and then you leave the office and, you might be aware, but action and practice is where things happen. That's where you really get results, right?
Oh, I love what you just said. And I have a perfect example of how I support someone's action. I have a client that really has troubles, uncomfortable getting out. And so she's working on getting, going to events, and she tried to do too many, it overwhelmed her. But to make a long story short, we came up before she does her event. She has an event this Sunday, and to prepare herself mentally, because the hardest part is for her even to get out of the house. We came up at a certain time. It's when she's going to start thinking at, whatever time she puts, what time, she needs to start thinking about what she's wearing. She needs to look up the address where she's going. She
Mhm,
gets very finding parking because she's going by herself. Where's the closest parking lot? When do you get into the shower? And these steps worked the first time we did it.
mhm,
And then we missed like a week session because she had to go out of town. And So, and she didn't do anything. So this Sunday, to make sure she's following through on her action plan, to go out to this event she wants to go, I told her she chooses because everything's up to her and she has to agree with it. It's her decision. So what we came up with is when she arrives or before when she gets in the car, she needs to text me and say, I'm on my way. And this, whatever she wants to text me.
Right, accountability.
It's accountability. And that is one thing I love about being a life coach and even going to a life coach is that we make our clients responsible for their actions, their action plan, but also they have accountability.
Right.
And some weeks, if it's a bad week,
Support.
pray about it. We work on what that issue is that week. I don't want people to think it's like it's regimented because I have some weeks we start working on an action plan and then the next 2 weeks they've just had a lot of struggles that they're going through. So
Mhm.
we just that struggle of what they need to do, what's happening, how are they feeling, and working through that of how can they get through that struggle. So I mean it's really what they come to the session for. However, we do have some things that we try to accomplish to keep that going also, if that makes sense. Kind of it's
Yeah,
still
definitely. So if someone wants to do a one-on-one like coaching session, not one session, but like purchase a series or they have a struggle in mind, where can they find you and what would it look like?
well, you can find me on my Instagram account, which is at Kerry Kerry Life Coach. It's the account that has 75,000 followers. I'm saying that right now because I have someone impersonating me with my name and just changing it, so I don't want you to be confused. When you go to my Instagram, you go to the link tree, and that takes you right into where you can get the Happy Life Assessment for free. Just click on it. It'll be emailed. I think you have to approve the email so it's not, considered spam or something. And then you can go into my coaching packages. It goes into talking about me. And then it takes you to my website. And right now I like keeping things simple. I've been
Mhm.
on some pages and it's kind of, I felt like I was getting shells to shells understanding. I just have it really simple. I have one day at a time. If you just want to try one session, try that one session. And then I have a 1 month transformation boost, and that is 4 sessions where we do one each week. However, if you don't want to do one each week, if you want to do 2 right away, take a break. I'm very, very flexible. And
Mhm.
then my the best value one is what is the 3 month immersion, which is 6 sessions. This one is every 2 weeks, but I have clients that want the 6 sessions and they do it every week. So as I said, I'm very flexible what it reads. And what I'm working on right now is I'm going to have sometimes the coaching sessions are expensive, and this is what pushed me into this direction to help more because there's a lot of people from my Instagram. I probably got over 100 messages and I reply back to everybody. It's very time consuming. A lot of people struggling in toxic relationships. So
Mhm.
I will have a 12-week course on finding happiness after a toxic relationship. And there's a lot that we have to go because there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of yourself being broken down. But what I'm doing is each module will have lessons, have videos, we'll have questions, journaling. And what I'm also doing is once a week for it to be a community of people suffering in the same thing, doing group sessions.
Mhm.
And I don't want the group to be more than 20 women because I want to keep it intimate. But with that, probably do 2 hour sessions, hour and a half. Have it down where we can break off in small groups. We can talk about shame, getting into our negative core beliefs. We can talk about narcissistic traits. I cannot tell anybody that their partner was a narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not a psychiatrist. However, people with toxic traits, toxic people have a lot of narcissistic traits. So we
Mhm.
can go into healing, go into awareness. And I'm really excited about this because, my package of just 6 one-on-one, this 6 one-on-one sessions. What I'm planning to do with this 3-month course is they'll get 12 group sessions plus the course, and it's working at your own pace, and it'll be probably more than half the price of just doing 6 one-on-ones. So I
Wow,
think it'll be,
that sounds perfect, actually.
and I think I'm really excited about it because the people that I've done some free sessions with just to help them out, they really can't afford, that. So this is something, I was talking to them and they would like, I'd love a community that could support me in my problem to be, and it will be for women only,
Mhm.
uh, to be with a group of women and, understand, respect, but just, excuse me, no, I'm not the only one going through this. I'm not the only one fighting. I'm not the only one struggling in this pain. So I'm really excited about that because I like working with groups a lot. A lot. I think the dynamics can be fun,
Mhm.
and I think it'll be fun to mix people, to be in small groups, come back, and what did you have? So
Yeah.
that I'm really excited about. And then I already have this one written up. It's going to be finding your happiness through self love. That will be a 4 weeks course. um, this one I might just offer, 1 or 2 one-on-ones, or I might do group. I'm not sure. I think group sessions will be helpful, but that one I'm still working out how I'm going to do that. But that's great because we get to dive into some good stuff.
Yeah.
Negative critic, talk about how to tame it. And then also, what I love, the beauty of this work is how you transform that negative thought and work it into a positive affirmation
Mhm.
and positive thoughts, and getting into people to really talking about, what are you good at? What are your strengths? Where are you gifted? And, and people learning on, what are your values? What are positive things that mean to you? And, it'll touch on boundaries and just all that great stuff of, self-love that's important.
Sounds so exciting. Yeah, I know it's
Mm.
a lot of work, but it sounds like such a rewarding work. Yeah.
Mm. I do love it. But and the other place they could just go direct to my website, which is, you can look it up, Carrie, Life Coach also, and you'll see that it's a website, not my Instagram, or it's my name, which is www.Kerry, Kerry, Rosenberger, A as in Apple, SENBERGER.com. It's a long last name. That's why I've kind of dropped it. Much easier.
Just Carrie Life Coach.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Ah,
Thanks for joining. I
it was
so
wonderful.
appreciate it.
Thanks.